Hey, I'm Zach.
And I'm Jesse.
We're going to be reviewing the BROWEY C600 Solar Portable Power Station next on Now Let's Review.
So yeah, this may look like a briefcase from some kind of sci-fi movie, but it's got a trick up its sleeve. Solar panel and a stand. And this thing is both a battery with built-in solar panel.
Oh, wow. I knew something special about it.
Yeah, normally I make fun of these products that are batteries that are called solar generators because that is misleading. But in this case, I will totally go with their name, which is a solar portable power station because they built the solar into it, which is really smart.
It is really cute. So let's talk about what this basically is. If I turn it over here, you'll see that we have some power ports here. This might look familiar. This is a typical house outlet. And this...
How much can you draw out of it?
600 watts.
Okay.
So this is why it's the C600. You can draw 600 watts out of it. That means that this will not run a hairdryer.
Right.
But it will run, I would say, most medium to low load things.
Would it do a blender? Because they showed that in their ads, and I'm like, my blender upstairs in the kitchen draws a lot of wattage, but is there like a portable blender?
Probably not going to run a Vitamix, but it could do like a NutriBullet, one of those smaller blenders. If you're going camping, I don't know if you're going to be making mojitos or not, but it really depends on the size of the blender. You should test it out before you go camping.
I think this is where you have to do a little bit of research before you buy your battery. So there's a bunch of use cases here, and I want to go through them with you of what you can run off this and for how long. And I feel like this is where you really should stop and take a minute to do your research. If you do it right and you get the right unit, you'll be very happy. So before we get into it though, there's two different colors you can get this in. We have it in the orange, you can get it in the green, a little cheaper actually. So it's $5.95 in the orange and it's $5.75 in the green. By the way, I've seen it on Amazon way cheaper. So the prices I just gave you are from their website, but I've seen it cheaper on Amazon. I think it was like $4.79-ish on Amazon. So at that price, I'm pretty interested in this.
So let's talk about the outputs, because if you want to charge things up, it really depends on these outputs.
Oh, and before we get to anything else, how much energy can it store?
614 watt hours. So not quite a kilowatt hour. It's about half, I would say probably usably around half a kilowatt hour, which is a lot when we're talking about phones. It's not a lot when we're talking about like leaf blowers.
Right. All right, so let's get to the outputs then, I guess, huh?
Okay, so this unit has several different outputs. The first one is going to be the 110 volt outlet like we saw before, and that is going to go up to 600 watts like we've talked about. Next is going to be your USB-C, and this is one of those high-powered ones that you can charge your laptop off of.
Yeah, 65 watts, but it's only one USB-C.
So that's kind of a downside. Then we've got two USB-As, and these are both 18 watt USB 3 QCs, or quick charge USB 3 18 watts. So
yeah, it's good. It's a lot of power, but it's USB-A, which are the big ones, which I mean a lot of people have, but things are going towards C, so.
True. There's also 3 different 12 volt outputs. There's 2 barrel connectors and then one carport. Are we calling it carport now? I thought it was called cigarette lighter. Nobody smokes anymore. Good thing. And so that's what we've got in terms of outputs. Now, in terms of inputs, we have 2. One is this, simply input solar energy, and it will turn it into some solar power. This is a 30 watt panel. I was able to get about 28 watts on a bright sunny day in June.
Pointing it right at the sun.
Pointing at it as best as I could, I was getting 28 watts. So
I want to get back to the solar panel in a second, but what's the second input?
The second input is going to be a 12 volt barrel connector.
How do I use that?
So that is going to be where the accessory kit comes in.
Oh, okay.
In your accessory kit, you're going to get a wall adapter. That's going to have the barrel connector. That's going to be able to charge this up in about 6 hours is what their website claims. You can also charge it from your car.
That takes 6 to 12 hours.
So that would be with your car running.
Unless it's electric.
Or if it's drawing from the battery. And lastly, they give you a barrel connector to barrel connector, along with a whole bunch of different things. So you could find a different 12 volt power source. This could be anything from some solar panels have this to stuff like that, but you're not gonna be able to pull more than 100 watts in.
Yeah, so I want to point out that yes, you could plug in a second solar panel to this, but it has to be maxed out at 100 watts. And so it's going to take you hours and hours to charge it. So with its built-in solar panels, like you said, 30 watts, if you miraculously could keep this pointed at the sun and the sun was out forever, it would take 20 hours to recharge this from 0 to full. So that's not going to happen. So
unless you're doing a polar expedition.
But let's be realistic on how you're going to use this solar. I think what's cool is most laptops and stuff draw about 20 to 30 watts. So if you had this out in the sun while you're working on your laptop, you're not really using any of the juice in the battery. So that's kind of cool. Also, if you leave it out in the sun while you're, say, hiking and you come back after a full day, you probably put in 180, 200 watts, so maybe a third of its battery capacity, which isn't bad. But if you're thinking that like, oh, in one day I'll have it back to full, you will not.
Right. But I mean, I just want to provide like an example of what you might be able to do. Let's say that you're camping and you need this to basically just charge like your phone and your camera and maybe your laptop, but just for a couple hours worth of work. If you leave this in the sun, so not in, I know most people don't go camping in the middle of an open field. They like trees around them. So you need to find a spot at your campsite which is going to stay sunny the whole day, can't be shaded. Let's say you find this spot and you leave this set up and you go hiking and you go take pictures and you're using your phone for GPS and video and all this stuff. You come back to the campsite, you have some extra energy stored up in this battery, and you're going to be able to use that to charge those things back up at night.
I think it'd be good to go through some use cases to make sure that this will have the storage that you need. So for instance, if you had a 10-watt LED light bulb that you're going to have in your tent, this could power it for 72 hours. If you have a mobile fridge that's 20 watts, which would be a very tiny mobile fridge, maybe like the test fridge that we reviewed, that would be 30 hours of a fridge. Not bad. If you have a projector that you bring along because you want to watch some outdoor movies, and if it's a 65-watt projector, which is a small projector, that would be 10 hours of that. If you have a laptop, a 50-watt-hour laptop, that would be 21 charges, so that's plenty. A regular phone would charge 55 times, so that's awesome. A camera would charge 41 charges. Wi-Fi would run for 72 hours. A television, which I think is a big use case here, if it was a 110-watt TV, which is about right, that would run for 8 hours. So you could watch movies all night. A blender, again, it would have to be a small blender, 180-watt blender, but you could run that for 3 hours. Now, no one's going to run it for 3 hours. You're probably going to run it for 10 minutes or 5 minutes.
Maximum.
Right. And so that gives you some idea. This is great for kind of small camping trips, not weeks and weeks out in the wilderness, but a day or two. I think it'd be great. I also think it's great because it's all together. You're not going to lose your solar panel. You just throw this in the trunk. I think it's great as like an emergency thing, or if you're going on a remote little video shoot, you want to make sure you charge up your drones and everything. I think I'm going to use it a lot.
I like the size. I think that this, is this the biggest and the best or the most expensive? No. So it's pretty small, 23 pounds. So it is man portable. It's great. It's not bulky. A lot of other batteries, because they're bigger, are going to have much wider flare out from the handle. This you can carry right down by your side. And so you can really walk quite a distance with this. I wouldn't want this like necessarily in a backpack if I'm going on a very, very long hike, but if it's just to get to the campsite and that campsite's a mile or less away, this isn't that bad. There are some batteries where it's like, you need to have your form of conveyance, whether that be a car or a boat, like next to your campsite because those batteries are so heavy, you're only going to be able to move them like 300 feet.
So I have a question for you. One thing that I like to know about these is how loud they're going to be if they're going to be in my tent at night. So can you turn on the fan?
So right now the AC outlet is actually on. We don't hear anything. I know that it does have fans because there's a grill, and when you turn on the AC power, it goes. So like that was kind of a loud fan, but it only turned on for a second. I think we need a high enough power draw. So do you have like a hair dryer?
I do.
Okay. Let's try that. Now it will not be able to do a full hair dryer at full power. So we're gonna have to set it to like low. And even then it may not be able to keep up, but let's see.
Low and low.
Okay. So that's pulling 75 watts. Go to medium heat. That's 300 watts. So far, no fans.
Want to go higher?
Yeah.
Or I can turn the fan speed up.
Try that.
500, whoa.
700. Okay. So that's what's going to happen when you overpower it. So turn that off. Let's see.
Okay, so we're at 545.
Okay.
So we should be getting the fan in a bit, I would think. Maybe it's just during charging.
So I don't hear anything yet.
All right, well, I think that answers my question. A lot of the ones that we've seen, the fan just turns on no matter what you do, practically.
Right.
And that just annoys me because I'm like, you're out in the woods, you're out in the quietness, right? So the fact that the fan doesn't turn on after like 3 minutes of running a hairdryer is really good.
Now let's talk a little bit about the solar. So if you're gonna put this out in the sun, it's going to get hot.
Yeah.
And you're probably going to be, if you're near it, you're going to be in the sun, which I know most people aren't in the sun a lot of the time.
Oh, I see. Like, so if you're doing what I'm doing here, which is like being on my laptop while this is in the sun, you'd have to find a shady line where you put it in the sun.
And then the shade's always going to move, so you're always going to have to move it, or you're going to need a longer cable. Not a big deal, completely solvable problem, but it's something to think about. The other thing is, if you are drawing high loads while it's getting solar energy struck upon it, it could overheat. Once this gets above 116 degrees Fahrenheit, it will no longer provide an output. So that is something to keep in mind if you're going to be somewhere that's going to be really, 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 really hot.
Well, and I want to talk about beaches. So this is not the kind of thing I would bring to a beach because, I mean, a little bit of sand is going to probably screw it up for life.
At
and
least
you'd have to
the
be,
fan, yeah.
You'd have to be so careful. And even if you're like, well, I didn't get any sand on it, then some kid runs by and, you know, throw sand on it. So I don't know how to solve that problem, but you'd have to be super careful of it.
Yep.
I do really love that it's got its own kickstand.
Yeah, I think that that's a really nice feature. It could be a bit of a handle. Let me unplug this for safety, and you could do it like
I wouldn't.
this.
I don't think it's been designed
That's
for
not.
that.
It's not.
There's so much
any
leverage.
lighter at
it
all.
It could just snap it.
It's so much better to lift it from the top, in my opinion, and carry it like this.
But what I mean is, instead of you having to find, you know, a book to put under it to keep it at the right angle, not only will it automatically go to this angle, but then on dirt and stuff, you can put it pretty much any angle you want, as long as there's friction.
Keep in mind also, you don't want to have the solar panel kind of like this. So like, even though it could be tempting to be like, oh great, you want the solar panel to be on that flat plane. That's why they designed it to open this wide.
Yeah, and the other thing with solar, once you get to know solar a little bit, is you know that if you shade a part of the solar, you lose energy. Jesse did some testing, and it really wasn't that bad. Even if a little bit of shading takes place, you only lose a couple watts. So I think you were getting down to like 22 watts when you had a little bit of shading.
Yep, and then 18 when I had both hands in front of it. So that was pretty impressive.
And the other thing that was impressive is, you know, the sun is moving. Or we're moving. And so when this is pointed at the sun, you think, good, I'm done. I can leave it for the day.
The sun is going to move throughout the day.
But what we found is that these are pretty good offset. So even though you probably don't want to get out every half hour and move it, it was still getting pretty good energy use.
Even when it wasn't pointed.
Absorption.
Right. Even when it wasn't pointed directly at the sun, it was still getting around the 18 watts, which again is not a ton of energy. You're probably going to want to maximize it because 18 watts is half of what this should be able to do. So you are going to want to point this at the sun as much as possible, but it's nice to know that if you leave for a while and come back, that it probably will have generated some electricity in the meantime. And
that's what I want you guys to just know about with solar. It's not point and shoot. It's not just leave it there and then 8 hours later you collect it for the day. You really should keep it clear of shade and be moving it. Otherwise, you're really losing out on a lot of energy. And if you went camping and that's not your job and you didn't want to do that, just keep in mind that you'll be really reducing the amount of power that the solar part gets.
And if there's any like tall grass or leaves or anything in the way, whether that be like your pack or something,
or your dog,
that can also shade it. So you're going to want to make sure that this is in a position where it's completely unobstructed.
A hack is put on top of your car.
That's true.
You know, you get it higher up, less chance of shade from trees and less people bugging it.
Last couple things here are the screen. So the screen has a little display here, which will show you the battery level down to the 20% mark. So you have everything from 20, 40, 60, 80, 100. Not going to be terribly accurate, so don't depend on that with your life. And then it's pretty bright in normal conditions, and it's about as bright as most portable battery packs. The only thing is, most portable battery packs don't have a solar panel on them, and so they are not sitting directly in the sun. If you're in the sun, the screen is kind of hard to read. They would have had to go to the umpteenth degree to get this to be so bright. So while it is a little hard to read, you can read it. It's just a little hard to do when the sun's shining down on you. The next part, which I think is kind of a plus and a minus, are these little covers that go over the inputs.
Little flexible rubber.
So you can see very easy to peel back, and then you can you can get to whatever you need to do. The only problem is kind of getting them back in. Takes a little bit of practice. You can't just kind of push it. It won't go in. You have to kind of, each hole, kind of massage it in. It's a soft silicone. And so, I mean, the carport one's nice, but like each of the rest of them is probably gonna get like flutzed around in your car, and you're gonna have it be, it's not perfect.
The other thing is, this is very similar to a lot of the other units right now. They have an AC and a DC button. And if you know how to work it, that's great, but then probably the rest of your family's gonna use it. And unless they all know how to work it, they're gonna plug in, not hit the DC button, and they go, Mom, my phone's not charging.
And they won't have checked that the phone was charged. So
Right.
they'll come back from the hike and their phone will have died when they would have expected it to be full. And then it's gonna be like a whole thing. So make sure that you check when you've, that it's turned on basically. There's a DC and an AC out, and it's the two buttons there. The other thing to point out too is that if you leave the AC on, it doesn't tell you, but it is drawing wattage.
Yeah.
And so this could kill the battery while it's sitting in your car doing absolutely nothing.
Right, that's called phantom drain.
And that's because it has to keep the inverter on, so that way when you do plug something in, it turns on immediately and it doesn't have to like, you know, you don't have to say like, wake up. It'll just, and it'll stay on forever. So it'll kill itself if you leave the AC on. And the only scary part about that is it's a single button press from on and off.
Right.
So again, if it's sitting in the trunk of your car and something shifts and hits the button, it could kill the battery by the time you get to the campsite.
Good point. I think we're going to use it on a lot of our film shoots and stuff. If you have questions, let us know down in the comments. Make sure you hit the bell button so you'll get notified of all of our upcoming reviews. Hit the subscribe button because that really helps us out. And then let us know what you'd like us to review or questions that you have. We'll see you soon. Now let's review.